Hello, my name is Amir Avivi, and I'm the founder and CEO of IDSF Habitchonistim. 73 years ago, the modern state of Israel was founded. Against all odds, and despite the best efforts of the Arab countries and naysayers across the globe, we, the Jewish people, established a modern Jewish democracy in our ancestral homeland. Let me ask you a simple question. Why have the Palestinians not been successful in establishing their own state? The United Nations partition plan handed an Arab state on a silver platter, but the Arabs rejected it. They chose not to declare statehood. They repeatedly refused statehood as recently as in 2000 and 2008. They were offered Gaza, almost all of Judea and Samaria, parts of Jerusalem, all rejected. Israeli prime ministers were willing to dissect and destroy the biblical heartland of the state of Israel in the name of peace. But all these efforts were rejected. The world likes to point a finger at Israel and call us occupiers. They say that we are denying rights, denying statehood to our people. It's not true. Denying the fact that the land of Israel is our ancestral land won't solve the problem. As a retired Brigadier General in the Israeli army, I can tell you how happy I would be if the Palestinians successfully build a state. Do you know how many lives are put in harm's way every day, and how many billions of dollars are spent because they refuse to create their own normal state? But the Palestinians refuse to build a state. They would rather devote their efforts to destroying the one Jewish state than have a state of their own. So what is the solution? Peace is important. We want peace. We pray for peace. But dividing up the land of Israel will not bring peace. We have 73 years of proof. But there is a thought. Israel is the home of innovation, technology developed in Israel improved lives around the world. We're in the business of exporting great ideas and great minds, from drip irrigation to microprocessors to cancer research. We are cutting edge. So why don't we have any new ideas when it comes to solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Well, there are in fact new ideas. And Israeli politicians, Palestinian leaders, and international negotiators need to start to think out of the box to find solutions. But one thing is clear. Giving up land for the sake of peace never works. Peace treaties come and go, but you can't get your land back. If Israel gives up the land for peace, we will have no land and no peace. The current borders of Israel are too small to divide between two nations. They are not large enough to provide strategic positions and security for two countries. Once we establish that land for peace does not work, there are still options. Dr. Moti Kedar has a great idea of creating emirates between all different local Arab clans, just like they have in the UAE. There would be the Emirate of Hebron and the Emirate of Jericho, etc. I've spoken to some of the big Arab families and they like the idea. I myself have been a big proponent of the new state solution. Build a Palestinian state, but where is it built? There are really only two options. Build a Palestinian state in Jordan, which is anyway 80% Palestinian, or build a Palestinian state in the Sinai Peninsula adjacent to Gaza. The Sinai Peninsula is currently almost empty. If you are an Arab living under the failed Palestinian Authority in Ramallah or under Hamas terrorists in Gaza, wouldn't you rather have your own plot of land in the Sinai Peninsula with drip irrigation farms in a free democratic Palestinian state? We need to think out of the box and find solutions. The Jewish people were exiled from our land for 2,000 years. We came back and have created one of the most forward-thinking democracies in the world. And now we need to maintain our sovereignty in the land and secure the Jewish state for generations to come. We are not about to retreat to indefensible borders for a short-lived peace. Let us build a lasting, real peace with our neighbors, but let's do it in a way that actually works.
Reporting for Newsrael, I'm Dr. Anthony Harper with Brigadier General Amir Avivi. Thank you for joining me, General Avivi.
My pleasure.
And, you're in Israel and the wonderful state of Israel. And there are a lot of concerns that people have. I know our audience, evangelical Christian people, are concerned about Israel. They pray for Israel and pray for you and everyone there. What is your concern about the rise of anti-Israel policies or views, some often maybe indistinguishable from anti-Semitism? But what are your concerns?
Well, I think that anti-Israel sentiment is basically another kind of anti-Semitism. Israel is judged in a completely different way than any other nation in the world. And the big problem with this anti-Israel sentiment is mostly that it affects part of the Jewish communities, and there are Jews that basically disconnect from their connection to Israel and the Jews living here, and this is bad, and this is why we really need to focus mainly on strengthening the connection between the Jews in the diaspora and the state of Israel. This is really important.
I know very serious concerns for our audience that prays for Israel on a regular basis, and I know there are other concerns that really got a lot of attention. Has been the judicial reform issue here in America. There's been opposition to judicial reform. So what are your concerns about the things that have been going on the street regarding these protests and in opposition to judicial reform?
So I think there is something a bit strange going on, because when you talk to most of the people, most of the Israeli society agrees that there is a need to do a judicial reform. I think that the discussion is more about the way, the pace that which it's done. And unfortunately, instead of having the reasonable people and the politicians really having a serious discussion about what is exactly the right balance between the Supreme Court and the legislators and the government, the discussion is very extreme, trying to portray this issue as the end of democracy. I don't think this is the reality. I think this is a very serious issue that needs to be addressed very seriously, both by the coalition and the opposition. And our organization, IDSF, really encourages our politicians and also on the public sphere to really conduct a serious discussion, because we definitely need some kind of judicial reform. What it is exactly, this needs to be discussed.
Okay. Are you aware of the Knesset member Simcha Rotman?
Yes, of course, I know him well.
Yes. I remember talking with him about this issue. He was concerned about foreign government intrusion. Do you see any of that, or concerns about foreign government intrusion regarding the operation of Israel and this judicial reform issue?
I think that Mr. Rotman and also our Minister of Justice, they have a very clear view on what needs to be the judicial reform. I think they're having a big difficulty communicating their views to the society in a way that people can really understand it in depth. The marketing of these ideas is not very good. And I think there is a big challenge here, how to really conduct these discussions in a way that won't create a crisis in the Israeli society.
I know it's a very serious concern for our audience. They want peace, and they pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And I know it's a very troubled time there. And but there's also the issue about the pressure from other sources to divide up Israel. This idea of a Palestinian state. I know that Israel withdrew from Gaza, and we've seen a lot of problems with Gaza. Withdrawing from land hasn't seemed to brought any more peace. So what are your concern about the pressure to divide Israel with a Palestinian state?
So I think that at least at the moment, it's not at the center of discussion, but I can say, and I say it crystal clear, Israel cannot exist, cannot thrive, cannot prosper without the Jordan Valley and the mountains of Judea and Samaria. Israel cannot be divided. Israel needs to have overall responsibility and sovereignty in the land of Israel. We do need a solution with the Palestinians. We want the Palestinians to govern themselves. There are a lot of solutions which we research and look at at what might be possible solutions to this issue. But the solution is not by dividing the land in two, but finding a solution where the Palestinians can govern themselves and yet be part of a overall security responsibility of Israel. We completely oppose in IDSF any evacuation of Jewish towns. We think that settling is a very, very important part of our national security. We cannot really have overall security and sovereignty responsibility without major presence of Jews in the Jordan Valley and Judea and Samaria.
It sounds like a lot what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said in the past about it's not viable for Israel to secede and to be able to really protect the interests of Israel. But in light of a lot of our evangelical Christian audience, the issue is for them is the Jewish scripture in the prophet Joel that warns about dividing Israel. For those that don't know, I'm sure you're aware that it does say that God enters into judgment in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the nations that divide up, that scatter his people and divide up his land. This is a big issue for our evangelical Christian audience, is God's warning not to divide it up.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, dividing the land will have spiritual repercussions and also security repercussions. This is not the way to solve the issue. We need to really think out of the box, and we have today new creative ideas. But really the biggest question of all is what is needed for Israel to be secure and prosper for generations to come. And this is what we are answering first before we talk about solutions. You don't start by thinking about solution. You start about thinking about Israel and the people of Israel. We have only one state. As you said, anti-Semitism is rising all over the world. Jews need their safe haven, and this is the land of Israel, and it needs to be strong, not only now, but looking decades and generations from now in the future. So we define what is needed for us to be secure, and then we can talk about solutions.
Well, I guess finally, I know that terrorism is a real concern on many levels, and different nations funding the Palestinian Authority and the UN agency UNRWA seem to be, from all that I have investigated, been involved with acts of terrorism and funding this. What are your concerns about the other nations funding the Palestinian Authority and this UN agency UNRWA?
So this funding definitely undermines Israel's security. The Palestinian Authority is inciting in a dramatic way in its education system, and this creates a whole society and generation that is hateful towards Israel and towards Jews. And this doesn't promote peace. This promotes terror and wars. And I think there is a need to be a very clear understanding of what the Palestinian Authority is doing, and not fund places where they incite for terror, as we see now. I can say that the Palestinian Authority is also terrible for its own society. The Palestinians hate this corrupt entity, and it will be interesting to see the day after Abbas, after Abu Mazen, their leader, what will happen with the Palestinian Authority, and how will the Palestinians themselves react to this future.
I know there are a lot of senators here in the U.S. Congress that are concerned. Specifically, Senator James Risch has been a leader in defunding this UN agency, UNRWA. But there's also the issue kind of related to this is the Taylor Force Act. What is your concern about the Taylor Force Act, and that really not really following the Taylor Force Act that's supposed to be in place to protect Jewish people there?
Taylor Force Act is a very, very important act. We have also an Israeli law that followed this law in Congress, basically saying that as long as the Palestinian Authority is funding terror, Israel won't transfer the money. And this is very, very important. We cannot give the Palestinian Authority money to kill Jews. Doesn't make sense.
So it's important that the Israeli government make sure that these funds don't go to terror, because this is what is happening now. We are funding the terror against us.
Now, I know back to the UNRWA schools. I know you're very familiar with UNRWA. It's a very well-known issue in Israel. And the concerns I've heard about the textbooks that don't display this land as Israel. They call it Palestine. What is your concern about this narrative continue referring to as Palestine and not Israel?
So this is, a very specific example, but the whole BDS movement, and the BDS movement is run by the Palestinians, especially by the Palestinian Authority, the worldwide movement. The narratives they push is not about a two-state solution. It's about Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, and in these scenarios, all Jews are in the sea. They are not talking about a solution. They are talking about the fact that they say that the Jews have no right at all for any presence in the land of Israel. And they forget that the name Palestine has nothing to do with Arabs or Muslims. This is Jewish history. When we rebelled against the Romans for the second time, the Romans decided, after they won against the Jews and they threw us out of our land, to rename Judea Palestina. And this is the name that was given to the land 2,000 years ago, long before Arabs and long before Islam. This is all about Jewish history. And for 2,000 years, everybody knew that the name Palestine has to do with Jews. And they're trying to portray a state that never existed and say that we, the Jewish people, are conquering a state of somebody else. This is reinventing history.
Along with this, and you mentioned Rome, the Roman influence. I know for a lot of people have been learning about the Roman Emperor Hadrian, that was the one that renamed that land Palestine over 2,000 years ago, that you were saying. But this is a very serious issue. Think about the lack of understanding in history about Roman influence.
Definitely, and this is also a fact that unfortunately many Jews don't know. And if you don't know this basic fact, how can you fight false narratives? So we really, really need to deal with education and making people remember who they are.
Another form of anti-Semitism that we see here in the U.S. has been the desecration of Jewish cemeteries, the assault on Jewish sites. Are you aware of any desecration of Jewish cemeteries in Israel or other parts of the world? Like maybe there is a prominent one in Vilnius, Lithuania, a Jewish cemetery there.
So definitely we see anti-Semitism all over the world. And this is, again, why Israel is so important. The only thing keeping Jews safe around the world is the existence of the state of Israel. Without Israel, no Jew would be safe anywhere. And Jews won't have any place to go to if they're in trouble. So this is why it's so important to strengthen Israel. And it's also Israel's responsibility to assist the Jewish world, to assist the Jewish communities in fighting the challenges they are facing, talking about anti-Semitism.
Well, I sure thank you, and our audience thanks you for joining me today. I know that people, they can look up some more information about Roman Emperor Hadrian and him renaming that land Palestine, as well as that Jewish cemetery in Vilnius, Lithuania, at savevilna.org website for those that want to know more. Do you have a website? Is there a website you would recommend for people
Definitely.
to learn more about these issues you're talking about?
IDSF.org.il, Israel's Defense and Security Forum, IDSF.org.il. We post there many videos also in our YouTube, explaining these issues, talking about our history, talking about issues of national security, strengthening the connection of Jews and Christians to the history and what is going on in Israel. So you're all invited to join us as a movement of 20,000 Israeli officers and commanders who deal with securing Israel for generations to come.
And I do also know that for those that want to follow this issue on Newsrael, there's a lot of Newsrael information about Israel, updated news at newsrael.com. That's NEWSRAEL.com. And I know you're familiar with Newsrael. How have you seen Newsrael's involvement in getting out these important items to educate people?
So I think that definitely informing people from Israel, making news every day which come from Israel to the world and not just by international reporters, this is very important. I think that the work they are doing with the evangelical world is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. But it's a blessing to be able to thank you for joining us to be able to share these so important issues regarding Israel, and our audience wants to relay the love for Israel and prayers for Israel in this very difficult and trying time. And thank you, General Avivi, for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
I'm going to say a sentence. You tell me if it's political or not. The land of Israel is the national home of the Jewish people. Political? Unfortunately, the response I generally get today when I say this phrase is that yes, it's a political statement. This approach reflects not only a serious error, but also a danger that could lead to the collapse of the state of Israel. Why? Have you ever considered what Israel's national security strategy is? If you ask senior figures in the security system and government, you'll get a response addressing all sorts of technical issues, like deterrence or alerts. But this approach is outdated and desperately needs to be updated. The main problem is that they fail to address the national components of national security. Why is this so important? Because in order for the people to be able to win, they must want to win. Will is the strongest human motivation there is. There is even an ancient Jewish saying, nothing stands in the way of will. Without the will to win, no army can win, no matter how strong it is. Look around, Russia in Ukraine, the United States in Afghanistan, or Britain here during the mandate period. The outcome on the battlefield is determined not just by weapons, but by the will to win. We as commanders have seen this countless times in war. And what is this will based on? The understanding that the land of Israel is the one and only home of the Jewish people. It is ours, and it is ours to defend. We have no other country, period. No aircrafts or tank divisions can substitute for a national vision. And what's going on with our enemies? While we are neglecting our national identity, the Palestinians are building their own. First, they are manufacturing their national connections with the land, claiming ownership of the land and using our own Temple Mount as a unifying symbol. Second, they are delegitimizing Israel in the international arena as the national state of the Jewish people. They are promoting anti-Semitism and anti-Israel propaganda. They are doing so in educational curriculum and in global and social media. And they are endangering Jews around the world in attacking our national ethos. The result of this Palestinian national strategy is notable on the ground. The Arab public today has a strong sense of national awareness, and Jews around the world are distancing themselves from Zionism, and anti-Semitism is on the rise. This growing Palestinian national awareness is providing them with a strong desire to win. So while the Palestinians are winning on the national level, Israel hasn't even stepped foot on the playing field. Why? Because it's political. If we want to win this war, we need to strengthen our will to win. And this won't happen without strengthening Zionist Jewish values and our national awareness. We must all proudly declare that the state of Israel is ours and teach this to our children. Abandoning our identity will not solve our problems. On the contrary, it will amplify them. We need to get back into the field and announce once and for all that this is our home turf. We need to put the national back in national security. We need to arrive to the next battle, which is just around the corner, with a national security strategy that is proud and clear. Since the days of King David and King Solomon, the Jewish people have never been as prosperous as they are now. But yet we all feel that there is something wrong. There is great discord in our country. This is because we have lost our identity and our national pride. We at IDSF understand this and are working with educators, communities, security experts, media personalities and policymakers to make it clear to all. A strong national identity is the key to our victory. It unlocks our ability to prevail against all threats that face the Jewish people and the state of Israel. The first Prime Minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, once said, "The fate of Israel depends on two things, its strength and its righteousness." So come on, say it together with me loud and clear without apologies, because this is anything but political. The land of Israel is the national home of the Jewish people.